Hey guys, Liana, it's Tatas Tuesday! So why is a Feedback Friday video up, Liana? I'm glad you asked that question. This video from last Friday really hit a nerve with people. And it really got me thinking because when, you get more views than average and all these comments, I mean, normally when I get, more traffic than usual, it's just a bunch of people looking to yell at me because it ended up on some subreddit. This time it wasn't. This time it was sort of overwhelmingly cool. And it's like, cool. I like cool. Cool. Can I say cool one more time? Cool. Okay. And so I started thinking, I think it was the last 5 minutes of this video that really hit a nerve with people. And I talked about, and that became the title, we need to start better supporting gamers. And, someone who's very smart and whose advice I listened to said, that's your keynote. And I'm like, what? People actually will listen to me talk about that? It just seems so common sense to me, but sometimes common sense is the most powerful kind of sense, isn't it? And that got me thinking. That got me thinking about this gamer stigma and the alleged divide. And of course, this is on the backdrop of the attempted, whatever it was. I haven't read too many details on it because it's too upsetting. The arrests made at that Pokemon tournament where two people were apparently going in with guns or something like that. I don't know. It was too scary. Mundane Matt told me about it, and I appreciate him telling me about it, but I couldn't follow up. It's too much. I can't think about that stuff right now. And to me, that just said, wow, this is just official that gamers are considered an easy target, right? And, then I see the police trying to humanize the people who had their information dumped because of the Ashley Madison hack. And I'm thinking, gamers have been doxxed for over a year over nonsense. And that was, it's a hate movement. So just, it doesn't make any sense to me. It makes sense. Like on one part of my brain, it makes sense. But in my heart and in my gut, it doesn't make sense. It's not fair. It's not fair to me that it is acceptable to treat gamers like we're orcs or trolls or some kind of horde race, And that got me thinking. That got me thinking about moving forward. How can we bridge this gap? How can we get over this idea that gaming is anti-woman? Because I know it's not. I know some people within gaming are. There's misogynists in every field, especially fields that are allegedly based on merit, when really it's more about connections. But before I begin, I pulled up a cute picture of Momo and Loki for you to look at while I talk to you, because they're cute, and I thought that's better than just looking at a YouTube screen. But, so, dogs and cats living together. This is the idea. So, like, one of them is a feminist, and one of them is a gamer, but they're both gamers, and they're both feminists, really. One just identifies as one and may support some principles, but that's not part of their identity of the other. And that's what I think is really going on. I think that the fight between gamers and feminists, or the so-called fight, I don't believe it's real on a mass scale, is more about what makes feminists and gamers the same than what makes us different. And I say this as somebody who's both a feminist and a gamer, and I'm like, okay, what are the common points? What are the common points? Because I'm like, according to the the mainstream media, not supposed to exist, right? I'm supposed to be at war with myself. I'm gonna punch self in the face, self. I hate you, self. Like, I'm supposed to be sending myself death threats. Like, it makes no sense. And so I thought about it. What it really is, it's about rejection. It's about rejection from the greater world. That's what drives a lot of people to feminist movements. That's what drives people to gaming. It's an alternate reality, right? It's escape. And feminism is attempting to change the world. Gaming is more of an attempt to escape it, or create a world that's more to your liking, at least temporarily. So it's different solutions to the same problem, but at the core of it all is rejection. I mean, I have feminist leanings because I'm so sick of telling people my interests and preferences are weird. They're not weird. They're totally normal for me. And I think that if more people weren't content to be shoehorned into boxes that are convenient for society, then a lot more women would play the games I do. It's just either they're not exposed or they're not encouraged to say they enjoy it because it's not a girl thing, right? And that's a very, very powerful thing. It's a very powerful thing. I see it in the kids that are in my life. And it's, if a girl has an older brother and all the boys' toys are around, she becomes very invested in, those are girl toys, those are my toys. And that sort of pink and purple become this identity piece because that's hers, not her brother's, right? And her brother won't go near them because they're pink. And it's real. And I wasn't like that. I was not a pink kid. I hated the color pink. I've gotten much better with pink now, but I mean, if there's like a pink shirt, a blue shirt, and a black shirt, I'm not going to pick the pink. I'm going to probably pick the blue. I like blue. But this is the thing, is that I got interested in feminist thinking because it made me feel less bad about the rejection I was receiving for being, oh, heaven forbid, loud. Oh, you're loud. I was a very shy kid. And, somebody asked me, how do I encourage my daughter to be more assertive? I want to raise a happy, authentic kid. And I said, I was the same way. I was super shy. And to me, I found something I cared about enough to start speaking. And then it was a lot of performing arts and a lot of time on stage, and so it just sort of became almost a displaced reality that when I have to do public speaking or I have to do something like this, it's like stepping onto the stage and you have your preparation and you have your rituals you go through to make that step from you as a person to you as a performer. And that's how I do it because, oh God, if I have to ask someone for money or ask something for me, not as a performer, like me as a person, it's terrifying. I'm still so shy. And yeah, it's something I've overcome mostly. But gamers are shy, aren't they? But, I'm too loud. I'm abrasive. I'm not nice enough. I'm aggressive. I'm arrogant, opinionated. All these things that, opinionated isn't necessarily an insult. It is more often with women, unfortunately. That's fading. And I'm happy to see it fade. But that's still there. Think about all the kind of lovable asshole personalities that are out there that are male, especially in gaming. Gaming loves entertaining assholes. They're male. There are different expectations from women in gaming, and that's not fair. Why shouldn't I be able to tell occasionally caustic comedy when it comes to gaming? If men can do it, women should be able to do it too, provided it's, funny. But funny is very subjective, hence feminism. I could get up and tell the exact same joke as a man and people would respond to it very differently. And that's the world. And it's much better for me. It's much more zen for me to be able to contextualize that and understand it than to walk away hurt every time it happens. Because it's going to happen and it's going to continue happening. I mean, that's what the video yesterday was about, right? Me sort of laughing it off. But all the sort of shock comedians I mentioned were male. There are people like, Wanda Sykes and I mean, Amy Schumer and Sarah Silverman are probably the two women, but they haven't, Amy Schumer, at least thus far, hasn't gone on to the massive success that a lot of the men, you know, like Seth MacFarlane and things like that have done with similar type of comedy. And it's funny because I tend to hear my mother's voice explaining why it's, Liana, that's gross. You know, that's gross. And we grew up in a family where the men were burping and farting and throwing darts, and there were sunshine girls on the walls and everything like that. So, you know, that was considered boys would be boys behavior. But if ever I did something like that, it was, Liana, that's gross. And I guess I was enough of a little rebel that was sort of like, yeah, but why can't I do what the guys are doing? And I mean, I was a tomboy. That stuff was always more interesting to me because girl play always seemed to involve a lot of sitting. Girl stuff. You know, you played house, you sat. You played tea party, you sat. You played dolls, you sat. Right? I wanted to play tag. And I wanted to play Thundercats. And me and my friend, her name was Vera Horseman, we used to beat each other black and blue pretending to be Lion-O and Mumra. Because Lion-O was who I wanted to be when I grew up. Ginger cats win. I guess I was a furry. I guess it means I am a furry. Hello, furries. I am one of you. But, you know, it was Lion-O, not Chitara. Because the red hair, to me, was something I was more in need of validation for. And, you know, with the gaming I took too naturally. It was there, and I just thought it was amazing. And people don't realize that back in the 80s, games were developed with women in mind. I mean, Centipede, if you look at the color scheme, it's all pink and teal. Like, it's blue-green. It's totally a feminine color scheme. No one noticed because it was fun, right? My mother loved Centipede, so I guess it worked. And then Pac-Man was apparently developed for women in mind, too, because some Japanese guy thought women like to eat. Well, it's true. It's like I said, all female stuff involves sitting and sipping. Not eating, sipping. You know, sipping tea, sipping wine. Sipping is the ultimate feminine gesture. On that. No, I want to do something fun. Because what happens while you're sipping? You just talk shit about people. You just gossip, and I hate it. I hate girls' nights. I hate them. Because it's either drinking or not drinking, but it's always gossip. The booze changes, but the shit talk stays, and I can't stand it. It just seems like such a colossal waste of time that they just pick someone for the week to tear down or complain about, and, you know, instead of doing something about your fucking situation, you know, like these women would have the same complaints again and again and again. You could practically predict what they were going to say, but they never did anything about their circumstances. And it drove me crazy. Because I'm one of those people, I'm branded as negative because I will say when something's not working for me so we can make it better. And that's my mother's voice kicks in again. Liana, don't be negative. Don't be negative. Isn't saying don't be negative, Mom? That didn't. Don't do that to mothers. Like, don't analyze their phrasing. It's a bad idea. Trust me. Learn from my mistakes. But it's one of these things that I always thought that was the weirdest thing in the world. But girls get it all the time. And it is one of those most... You know how I talked last week about why did you lie and how dumb that is? Don't be negative is a negative statement cautioning against negative statements. It is great in its complete contradiction. And, you know, instead of let's turn it positive, let's give somebody an example of positivity, you're shitting on the negativity, which is negative about being negative. It's awesome. It is just the height to me of toxic femininity. The don't be negative. And it's that smile. It's the same root. It's the same thing. Don't give me a reason to smile. Just tell me to do it. You know what? Fuck you. Give me a reason to smile. I'll do it. And that was part of modeling, is figuring out how to smile authentically, because you can tell when someone's faking. And it really does come from thinking something funny and thinking the right kind of thing, so you get the right kind of smile. It's more involved than I really thought it was. I'm really glad I did that just to see what it was like, because I never thought anybody would want to look at me in that way. I was a fat little ginger kid. I mean, who the fuck was ever going to be interested in me that way, right? Like, that wasn't even on the radar. And I think that's why I sort of understand gamers too. I was there, you know. I was and am you guys, and that, you know, that's why I keep pushing and I keep arguing and I keep, you know, pressing. I don't want to say fighting, because it's not a fight for me. It should be a debate or a discussion. If it becomes a fight, I'm like, go away, you know. And it's really unfortunate that this false division um, has taken over. This idea that feminists and gamers are somehow mortal enemies. And, you know, first of all, that presupposes that feminists can't be gamers, and that's bullshit. At least when I was growing up, you know, liking video games instead of sipping was a very bold act. It was very counter to gender programming. And now, you know, we know that these things are designed for men. And so, you know, women going in and saying, no, I'm allowed to like this too, because I'm a human being and my money's as good as yours. I think that that's awesome. The issue is this idea that feminists are trying to take away fun. And I think that's a real... I can see how it looks that way, because it's been handled very badly. Very badly. And I will admit that. I've been sitting here cringing for the last 3 or so years at how it's been handled. And you got to remember that the initial... the original seeds that we're going with this idea of objectification and gaze theory and all this stuff, it was being taught in a time where, like, wearing pants was radical, right? It think about it. I mean, we're talking about the 70s, right? Like, women only started wearing pants appropriately in that era, in the 60s and 70s. It puts it in context, you know. And we had mini skirts, and we had, you know, plunging necklines all of a sudden. All this was radically new. And the funny thing is, when women started getting rights, the clothes started coming off. I mean, that's what's so funny about this backlash. When you think about when suffrage first started, women were expected to be clothed up to the neck and down to the ankle. The more we got the vote, and we got financial independence, and we got, oh God, reproductive freedom, the clothes started coming off, right? And things became a much better place for men and women alike, right? So what happened? What happened? Well, a major economic collapse is what happened. Right? It happened. This is what happens. The fashion started getting, you know, more and more and more like flapper stuff in the 20s, and the market crashed. And we started getting the more conservative looks of the 40s and the 50s again. I mean, the 30s were just, it's a lost decade. Forget fashion then. No one had any freaking money. Right? So it stalled. But after the Depression, you know, the 40s and it started becoming very sort of proper again. And then it opened right back up again in the 60s and 70s. And then we got, you know, the unisex idea of the 80s, and that's just when people started going, whoa, this is mind-blowing. And then the 90s, something suddenly started to shift. And part of it is that nobody likes to do things exactly the same way as your mom did. And so second wave feminism, you know, the pants and no bra kind of feminism was your mom's feminism by the time kids were being born in the 80s. You know, the millennials certainly have a very different They were exposed to very different things as children. They're the product of the pink section at Toys R Us. I didn't have that. I mean, I was born in a period of time where toys were the least gendered ever. I mean, 1975, toys were the least gendered ever in human history. And since I started keeping track, obviously. But I was born a couple years after that. So I can't relate to what a girl comes into adulthood, what tools, what assumptions are in her head. You know, I grew up with, like I said, Thundercats and Transformers and He-Man. And He-Man came before She-Ra. So I was like, early adopter. Yes, riding giant cats. What is this horse and wings on your head? Go away. I don't want a pink horse. I don't need Swiftwind. I have Battle Cat. That is what I want. That is good. You know, we had these shows that were for boys and girls. I mean, things like Care Bears and the Get Along Gang and things like that. That was all like Sesame Street. Boys and girls watched it. And now Sesame Street is on freaking HBO. Like, wow, what a paradigm shift. And so, you know, obviously, millennial feminism is not the same as my late second wave, early third wave experience. It's different. And the challenges are different. And so, you know, I think that gaming is informed because, you know, sort of this video games as a thing, personal computing, and therefore video games got going in the 80s. It sort of has the same inspirations I do, that, you know, wearing less was considered feminist as opposed to she should really cover up. You know, because we came from the you can look but you don't touch, because we have this thing called mace now, and pepper spray. I mean, pepper spray was a big thing. The movies and the TV shows were all things about women having pepper spray in their purse, right? You couldn't do that now. It's assault. But back then, you had more self-defense type stuff. And yeah, women carrying mace. Of course, the damn thing's misfired. And then you'd shake it and kind of go and either spray yourself in the face or almost do it. They were garbage, those little pocket mace things. Oh, my God. But it was different. You know, the intent was the same. The execution was different. And so we have women there now who still want the same things. They just have a different vocabulary to express those things they want. It's much more structured and much more academic. And I think that's the disconnect. It's not a question of intent. It's not what's in our hearts. It's what's coming out of our mouths, right? Because if you're a 15-year-old kid on the internet, you don't know from fucking privilege. You haven't gone to university where the idea gets put in your head. Right? I don't think they teach privilege in high school. You know, they're still trying to get down, you know, counting and reading in some cases because the public school system is so shit. But, you know, it's not these when you start dropping $1 million academic terms that you got with degrees in liberal arts or humanities that when I was in university, we used to refer to as MRS degrees, meaning they were junk degrees that women were just there to meet the guy in law school or business school or something like that. MRS, Mrs. You know, now these are the courses that are pumping out things like privilege and white privilege and male privilege and, you know, thin privilege and all the different privileges, and it's putting people off. It's putting people off. So I think that, you know, feminists and gamers both understand rejection. We both like empowered characters. We both like stories of people finding their power. That's the arc of pretty much every adventure game ever made, right? We like the idea of people like us being able to win. The definition of people like us is just expanding rapidly. I mean, you got to remember when I got into games, we didn't have to worry about this stuff. It was you know, Space Invaders and Centipede and Missile Command and Duck Hunt and Pac-Man and even things like Mario and Wonder Boy. These weren't humans. Like, we weren't doing facial scans and motion cap and all that stuff. We didn't really have to confront these issues, and that's why when gender theory in video games, I just go, you can't. In those early arcade games, you can't get into it the same way because the technology was just, they made what they could. Pac-Man was a round yellow ball because that's what they could animate. When you get into sprite-based characters, then you can start sort of the film and TV analysis. But I don't think, not before that. It was too rudimentary. And that doesn't mean you can't talk about certain things, but you gotta be careful, not to try to, peel a lemon with an apple peeler. It's not going to work, and it's just going to be really gross. And so I think that what we really have is not an ideological divide. We have a language barrier. We have a massive language barrier, and we're also communicating through very similar hurts with different words to describe those experiences. But I almost guarantee you that the things driving the angriest of the protesters right now on both sides are very, very similar. It's a feeling that they are not accepted and a feeling that they're not wanted. Because really, isn't that what, all this decrying online harassment does? It's not, as someone who was actually sent threats, real threats, and had somebody follow me places in real life, the crap that makes us feel bad on the internet isn't because we're afraid for our safety. It's because we feel like this community that we came to looking for acceptance in a world that otherwise doesn't accept us. Well, here we are being rejected all over again. And it's gotten so bad in gaming that people are flocking to these anonymous message boards, and message boards culture is all about rejecting everybody equally, so nobody even has to try to be accepted. Shit posting is all about, well, we're going to shit on everybody, so there's really no burden to try to be liked. We hate everyone. We're going to attack and dump on everyone and be nasty to everybody. So, we're all assholes. We're all shitlords. Nobody's good. So then we don't have to worry about a hierarchy of popularity. We're all unpopular. And I think that's very sad. To me, that's a sign that a lot of people have given up. And that's the clash, is you get people coming in here and saying things can be better. And that's terrifying to people who have accepted the status quo and learned how to make it work through this very creative form of giving up without giving up. They've given up on things ever being better, so they've found how to make it work. I'll have to think of a clever term for it. But they act like they have no feelings and they don't care, and then they invest in these powerful, romantic tradition, emotional experiences. And by romantic tradition, I don't mean boy, girl, fall in love, get married. That's a modern version of romance. I'm talking about the classic structure of romance, which is big experiences and big emotions. It's all over video games. The art inspiration, the composition, the types of stories, the very concept of the anti-hero came out of the romantic period. And so I think that this is the first step. We have to realize that everybody's working through hurts. And they're very similar hurts. And so I think this means two things. One, don't automatically think that person who is using terms that you find distasteful, whether it be patriarchy and misogyny and harassment, or whether it be, some Chan speak, right? Don't assume that's an attack on you. And don't assume they're necessarily trying to be aberrations from the norm. They're speaking in the norms of their subculture. But the other thing is, don't attack. you know, instead of going, that's offensive, just go, do you realize that I don't know what that term means in your context? It still happens to me that people will reference these things that are memes of memes, and I'm supposed to know what this thing is. And if you don't know, you just don't know. Nobody bothers explaining it to you. And, I found out just last week, apparently triggered is slang now. News to me. So if someone says triggered, how do you know if it's the slang term or the actual legit thing? I don't know anymore. I'm not quite sure. It's confusing to me, but nobody bothers to explain things to anybody anymore. We're not inclusive. We're operating on mutually exclusive paradigms. It's become very tribal because everyone's threatened and everybody's looking to keep to their own because they're threatened. And so the way forward is working through that threat, becoming those heroes we worship in freaking games that get knocked down, get back up and do it again and soak damage. And we all got to become tanks. Basically, we have to be those people who go forward and soak the worst of the damage so that, people can come and actually do something useful other than just, be a bullet catcher. And that's useful. I mean, tanking's fun, right? I'm more healer class. I like healing. And that's part of my issue with the internet. It's like, whoa. Who needs heals? Who needs heals, right? No. You're all tanks. You all just want to slaughter each other because you got a million freaking hit points and massive armor. No one needs heals. Everybody's happy. Okay, I'm going to go somewhere else and see if they want heals. But I really think this is insurmountable, and I really think it comes from understanding what we have in common, because what we have in common is far more than difference. And I think that if we all just stop pretending to be heartless assholes, because a real heartless asshole doesn't have to lash out at anybody. They get nothing from it. They feel nothing. If you feel nothing, lashing out solves absolutely nothing. It's a worthless endeavor because you're not getting anything from it. People who lash out don't have thick skins. They have exceptionally thin skins. They're wounded. They're hurting inside. And it's not always necessarily your problem to fix that, but it makes life a lot better if you recognize it. So hopefully that helps start to pivot the dialogue. We're not going to be able to take everybody with us. There are some people that are going to insist on staying behind. It happens every time there's a turnover. But I'm feeling a shift within feminism itself. And obviously there's been a big shift in gaming of late. So we're going to work it out, and we're going to figure this thing out, and we're going to do it together, just like Momo and Loki in this picture.